Thank you for staying with us. Well, yesterday, this matter took our attention and we looked at the angles of the law to it. But how about the leadership angle to it this morning? And that's what we have to discuss with Dr. Sam Adeyemi, a strategic leadership consultant who also happens to be a clergyman. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
We discussed, this a little yesterday, but while some are saying, of course, it's a political crisis, at the end of the day, these are both leaders that are being mentioned in here. Would you say it's a political crisis or a leadership crisis?
Well, it's a combination of both. There's the politicking and there's the leadership. And the political side is being resolved, right? Because from the reports on the news, the president intervened. They said elders in the state are intervening. But they said it's a family issue, which is fine. However, there is also the leadership dimension to it. As I was looking at the scenario, I remembered a research carried out by two professors, Kuzes and Posner, and they put the summary of the results in a book they called The Leadership Challenge. They interviewed thousands of people and asked, what do you like to see in your leaders? The first thing, what came topmost was, we want our leaders to model the way. They said they want them to give us an inspired vision. They want them to challenge the process. In other words, a leader must bring improvement. That's the essence of leadership. It's managing the change process. And then they said, you need to empower people to act. And finally, you need to encourage the act, the heart. So when I looked through all that, first, does this model the way? Oh, no. What kind of an example is this in terms of leadership? I think we're making progress, though, because some years back, I felt very sad the day some young kids were taken from school to the National Assembly on excursion. And that happened to be the day that members of the National Assembly were throwing chairs at one another. I felt really sad. So we've had less of that up until now. However, in terms of modeling, there are question marks here. What's the vision, really? Is this contributing to the development of Rivers State or Nigeria? And then talking about empowering, challenging the process. Is this going to improve our political process? Is this going to empower people to act? Does this encourage somebody's heart? I'm listening to citizens of Rivers State, and they're angry, and they're saying that they're sad. So we need to pay attention to the leadership dimension of everything going on, and I think we need to do it with urgency.
But the polarity, or rather the situation where people are polarized because of these interests is a concern. You heard those who are saying, one person should allow the governor to do his work. And we also hear on the other side, those in Abuja, who held a press conference in Abuja, who we are told are believed to be on the side of the Minister of the FCT, who is former governor of the state. So it seems that the people are polarized against each other. So we can't just say this is just a political crisis and it's being resolved. What's the assurance we have that this is not going to happen again? So in terms of, you've talked about the fact that, this needs modeling. Is this something that has to be done over time? Or how do we ensure that people are not polarized against themselves when political juggernauts have a disagreement?
Well, this issue of the people being polarized, it's been there all the while. It's the card that politicians play all the time. We're polarized along ethnic lines. We're polarized along religious lines, polarized along political lines. And that makes it really easy for the kind of leadership we have had to continue. We need a total change in the leadership system, and that's why I emphasize a lot on culture, specifically the leadership culture. When something produces the same result over and over and over again, it has moved everybody into autopilot. At an individual level, we call that habit. Yes, you have your fantastic New Year resolution. Like you said, we have 2 months to go now, and then everybody will be making New Year resolutions. Yet, some people find out their lives actually don't change. Why? Their habits. The human system is so powerful. It, as soon as it can, moves some things into the subconscious that we don't even need to think about, but we do. At a collective level, we're on a dangerous path when it comes to leadership. You will just notice we've been producing the same results. I'm not that old, but in the few decades that I have spent in Nigeria and in Africa, we've been producing the same results over and over and over again. So we need to pay attention, whether it's a monarchical system of government or democratic, or even, so there is monarchy and there is the democratic, right? Or the military. We've been producing the same result. Poverty, right? Deprivation for the people. It's terrible. And everything comes from leadership. My friend, Dr. John Maxwell, says, everything rises and falls on leadership. I say wherever the head goes, that's where the rest of the body goes. Some people say the fish rots from the head. It's still saying the same thing. So we need to pay attention to the leadership. They say when two elephants fight, the grass suffers for it. I even have a problem with that description. Why should you describe the people as grass? The people are supposed to be the elephant in the room anyway. So we need to pay attention to leadership and how it is done, and to change the belief system and the values that we have, and hold leaders accountable now to our vision.
We'll come to how we get that done, because the Minister of Information and National Orientation has also, that tends to have created that agenda for himself, you know, that we need to change things along this particular path. But this is not the first time we're having this kind of political crisis, leadership crisis, whatever you want to call it. And it manifests in different ways. It raises the question of succession. The former governor of Edo State had quite a tiff with his deputy at the time, who wanted to be governor. Current governor of Edo State is already in that same frame with his own deputy. The current situation in Rivers State is one that the current governor, one can say, rode on the political machinery or infrastructure of the previous governor to get into office. So while all of that can be said, okay, maybe it's some kind of succession system, you know, and all of that, but it questions the success of that succession program. Do you think we have a succession culture in our country, particularly in the political space for now?
Okay, so whenever I look at leadership within the context of Africa, I've come to the conclusion that the average African has the monarchical structure of leadership in our DNA. Honestly, it produces the same results in the family, in businesses, right? In government, even in our religious organizations. We treat our leaders like kings. And what we need to bear in mind is, in the monarchical structure, you don't have elections. You leave office when you die. We're now trying to build a democratic system on that foundation. So people leave office without wanting to leave office, right? So we have this godfatherism and all of that. So this brings me back to the culture issue. We need to actually discuss the country, discuss our collective vision. My proposal is we need to be discussing the development of Nigeria. Nigeria becoming a developed country like yesterday. We should have done that like yesterday. I'm asking myself, where did we decide we were going to be in 2023? 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It's the countries that made that decision that are thriving now. So it is when you discuss that vision that you ask yourself, what will take us there? Government is only a vehicle. You decide the kind of vehicle that will take you to where you are going when you've decided where you are going, whether it's a car, a boat, or an aircraft. We've not decided yet where we're going, not to talk of the kind of vehicle that will take us there. So getting down to those technical issues, you find out we will discuss strategy, but like Professor Peter Drucker said, the culture will eat your strategy for breakfast.
Oh dear. Well, so many questions to ask you, but Chamberlain and Mokwe have questions for you. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, good morning, Dr. Adeyemi. Good to see you again. I'm just wondering, looking at this scenario playing out in Rivers, and of course we also know that there are challenges across board in terms of what the people expect of the leadership. In fact, I've had several of these politicians tell us behind the scenes, look, we don't think like you guys. You guys may do your things, but that's not how politicians think. So it just appears as though they are set in their ways. So from what you're seeing, how far or close are we to imbibing some of these ethos to the extent of making meaningful impact on moving the country forward?
More Chamberlain, how far or close are we? We have a long way to go, and the earlier we get on the way, the better, right? So I've been asking myself, in all this scenario, what do the people get, right? Leadership is about people. So what do the people get? How is this going to improve anyone's life? So we need to discuss leadership, right? And leadership is ability to influence one or more people to achieve goals. I go back to the vision issue. So when I read Why Nations Fail, right, again by two professors, Acemoglu and Robinson, they said all over the world, human nature is the same. You have this elite class, just a small number of people, small percentage. They take control of the political process. They use political power to channel economic resources to benefit themselves and the people close to them. And the countries that have progressed the most are those that have changed that structure. So right now, what the politicians have said to you, they're just being honest. This is not about the people at all. The politicians negotiate among themselves, right? I have friends in government, and I know there are people that actually mean to do well. But the current structure, the current culture is overwhelming. And once majority of the people want things to remain the way they are, nobody is going to change anything. I mean, like a former governor, who's a friend, said one day members of his own cabinet were having a discussion somewhere. And they were saying, the governor would just be saying, vision, vision, vision. Is it vision we want to eat? Okay, let's share the money, right? And that's a governor talking about members of his own cabinet. So we need to get the people enlightened. But then those of us in government, in leadership right now, also need to urgently develop sophistication in leadership. And that's why I encourage, it's either we're going for training or we're getting coaches to advise us on the people's side of our job. We can't stop politicking, right? That's how we got there. But we need people to advise us on the people part of the job. And then more importantly, we need to know how to shift people's mindsets. We need to attend conferences, ongoing training and advice, shifting our ideas, because there are so many things coming at the leader. So I'm encouraging those of us who are currently in leadership, we need advice on how to do this people part. For those of us that are citizens, the earlier we develop our leadership skills, the better for all of us. Because at the end of the day, it's the average leadership quotient that will determine how fast we travel. I mean, this week, I've created platforms to help the people, to help those in government. And this week, I'm really looking forward to one of those platforms we created. We call it the Excellence in Leadership Conference. And we have thousands of people attend, where we share ideas, move things in the minds of leaders, because people are not going to travel faster than the leaders go.
For you, I mean, with all of those conferences and methods, the books that you've written, how do you measure whether or not, people are imbibing some of what you're saying, and then they're making impact in society? Because some people, I mean, after certain conferences, ordinarily you'll expect that not just them attending and listening, but it becomes part of their character, their way of life, if I could use that way. So for you, how do you measure it to see, okay, well, some of what we're saying are actually being naturalized and people are making an impact, and so we could keep going?
Thank you. It's feedback, right? Feedback. We ask the people that attend the conferences, ask those that attend our training. I mean, like, I founded the leadership school some 21 years ago. We call it the Daystar Leadership Academy because I found out we had only one business school in Nigeria and most people could not afford to go there. So we provided an alternative, cheap for everybody to attend. So we get feedback, right? And what we want to see is how their own thinking has changed, how much of self-awareness they have, the values they have imbibed, and the people they are influencing. I'm glad to know that I get feedback, interestingly, third-party feedback also from the people that they lead. It's amazing that employers say, for example, that products of our leadership training school and conferences are the best employees they have. That's one of the things that makes me happiest. I attended an event in Atlanta, Georgia, and there was someone there who did not recognize me, who knew me but did not recognize me until after I had started speaking. Then the person spoke up and said, you know what, I have friends that have attended your training. It may seem like nothing is changing, but I want to assure you a lot is changing. Somewhere along the line when we get our politics right in Nigeria, those people you're training are the ones that will provide the best quality of leadership in the country.
So my question is, how do we affect the politics? Because really, that's where the biggest impact is felt, Dr. Adeyemi. While you were speaking, you said a people cannot run faster than their leaders. And it will seem that, everybody you speak to will say the problem with this country is leadership. Leadership. Whatever level you look at, leadership. You have, spoken to a number of things that I have had on my mind. Even the questions that I have penned down, you've answered them. But I'm wondering, I think Chamberlain has asked that. Maybe I just missed the answer. How do we affect the leadership space? Coincidentally, maybe it's really no coincidence, the president and his ministers will be starting a retreat this morning. So maybe while you also answer that, if you could address them, if you had the opportunity to address, I don't even know if you've been invited to address them, but if you had the opportunity to address them, what will you be saying to them?
Thank you, Maokwe. So a few years back, I was at a meeting just a few days before this big event that happens in the US, the Super Bowl. And my friend, who's also a leadership expert, said, I know the team that is going to win. I said, oh, how come? He said the team with the better bench strength will win. So he said when the people on the bench are as good as the ones on the field, then you have a good chance of winning. I said, oh, wow. His prediction came true. And then just shortly after that, they were having the Europa Champions Cup in Europe. So I applied the same principle. I assessed the teams. Honestly, the principle worked. The two teams were equally good and nobody was scoring. One player was introduced from one team. He sank the other team. He scored the 2 goals that decided the finals. So here we are in Nigeria. What I would like to say to those of us in leadership is anywhere in the nation, in your organization, the team with the better bench strength will win. How do you create leaders? It's the quality of Nigerians that will determine the quality of Nigeria. We can be toying with and tweaking some of the strategies and plans and factors that we have. But I remember what the U.S. Deputy Secretary of Treasury, Mr. Wale Adeyemi, they call him Wale, but we know he is Wale, right? Adeyemi. When he came to Nigeria, he said the government is moving in the right direction, making some policy changes. He said, however, before Nigeria will attract the kind of foreign direct investment it wants, it must address some macroeconomic factors, and we're not addressing them yet. And he said the core factor has to do with the people. So I would say we need to raise leaders. Nigerians need to become leaders, high-quality leaders, citizens now. The days of believing that it's the people at the top that are leaders, everybody else is called to be a follower, those theories are dead. Leadership happens at all levels. If you don't improve the quality of the Nigerian, we're not improving the quality of this country. Leadership is not a day's job, it's a daily job. In the places where leadership works, you groom people from childhood. It's got to be there from primary school to secondary and all the way. What goes into the mind comes out in the life. What do we have in our country? You are raised in deprivation, you are desperate for survival. When that grows with you into adulthood and you become a governor, what do you go for? You have access to the resources that belong to everybody. You want to take care of yourself and your generations to make sure you never sink back into poverty. I'll tell you how they do it elsewhere. When you're in primary school, they take you to the orphanage. They take you to other non-profits. They teach you volunteering. They teach you service. At the highest level of your life, it will be what you give that will make you successful, not what you get. You are moving from high school into university, they ask you to write a personal statement. Apart from your academic qualifications, one of the major things they're looking for is the volunteering that you have done. They know if you move into university, you become sophisticated in management, but you are still self-centered, you will be a liability on the society. So I will ask that we pay attention to the average Nigerian, pay attention to our educational system, because that shapes the mind. Put our best investment there. Until then, my friends in government will continue to be frustrated, even with the best of their efforts. The poverty will continue, the quality of life will not improve, the people in government will be taking as much as they want, they will get a bad name and a bad reputation, and they'll be frustrated that even with the best of their efforts, people are not praising them for their efforts.
Well, we've been told that oftentimes when leaders shy away from investing in long-term policies such as education, yet education, we all know, is the only way for a people to be able to make progress. Having a conversation with former President Olusegun Obasanjo, and I can't forget what he said, that when you deprive a child of education, you've deprived that child of being able to be a meaningful citizen in the country. And I think that really summarizes at the heart of what it is that you're saying in terms of what needs to be done. But we know that oftentimes, because leaders have just 4 years, they seem to be political leaders now, they seem to be under pressure to, want to show that they're doing something and not want to invest in long-term things that would take time to show fruit. For instance, now, you say that you've been in this leadership training business now for 21 years, and we're asking you, what is the impact given where it is that we currently are? So how would you advise leaders who have elections, and I use these words very advisedly, who have elections in another 3-4 years, who will need to show results and want to do things for their people, and also know that the places where the investment is really needed are long-term investments that will not immediately yield fruit. Yet, that's where the greatest resources are needed. What would you be saying to them?
Thank you so much. What I would say is, think very well about your place in history. Stephen R. Covey said in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the first habit, begin with the end in mind. The countries that are thriving the most now, there was foundation laid by leaders some centuries ago. I studied civil engineering in school. And I know you want to construct a building, you start first with the concept, with the vision. The building needs to solve a problem. It needs to meet some needs. Who are the people that will occupy the building? What are their needs? How many rooms do you need? And so on. How many stories do you need to build? So You need to know your place in history. If you are around at the point of conceptualizing, accept that. Okay? Be an architect. Draw the plan. It is somebody else that will come and construct the building. The people that work at the foundation laying stage are different from the ones that work at finishing stage. You notice the ones at the foundation laying stage, they use very rough equipment, that dig the earth. But when you bring the guys at finishing stage, painting, those ones, they work with finesse and with accuracy. What's your own place in history? That's what I would ask someone who has 4 years in office. But, Maupe, I will swing this issue back to the people. The fact that we actually need to redefine leadership, move the discussion away from leaders to leadership. Okay? Leaders has to do with personalities and position. But leadership is a principle, it's a concept. And once you move the discussion there, then we're talking about everybody, because leadership happens at all levels. And that's why I would say to the people, right, we need to develop our own leadership skills. Because it's when we develop our power, that's when we can hold the people holding positions accountable. I've seen some administrations try to create a vision for Nigeria. It's not going to work. How do you create a vision for Nigeria when you have only 4 years, right? It's the people that need to create the vision. Nigerians need to take control. Now, this is, I know this is challenging, but we actually don't even have options. Nigerians need to discuss the future of Nigeria now. Interestingly, when I speak to the northerner, I speak to the person in South-South, I speak to the person in Southwest, all of us want the same thing. We want a developed Nigeria. Why are Nigerians shipping out, especially the younger generation? We're moving to countries that are developed where we can realize our potentials. Let's make Nigeria that country. So I would say the discussion is to start with Nigerians. What kind of Nigeria do we want? We need to discuss it, and we need to ask the people in leadership, in government, to let us start from there. You don't build a house from the roof. Let's discuss it. I remember 2014, we spent billions of naira having that discussion. The report is buried somewhere. We've not had the courage to discuss again. That's where to start from. If you don't agree on where you are going, any road will take you to where you are going, and you should not complain if you find yourself in the jungle. Let's discuss where we're going. And that will be leadership from the level of the people. That will then give those who go into government what to do. Just your own part. Do the 4 years or 8 years. Move on. Leave the job to somebody else. Let them continue. Nobody's going to transform Nigeria in 4 years or 8 years. We have to agree on that.
Now to you, Ayo.
Well, thank you, Mokwe. Your question, Mokwe, leads me to ask this question, Dr. Adeyemi. Do we have a leadership training system in Nigeria?
I would say no. Why? Because the basic components are not there. There are institutions, right, that help to, build someone into a leader. It starts from the family. So yes, we have the family. We have families in Nigeria. However, the pressure that is coming on families because of the economic situation and so on is eroding our values. The very place where character should be built. And they say the first 7 years are critical for shaping the values of a child. But here you are, instead of paying attention to character, right, families are chasing what to eat. You're having a scenario where somebody is being owed 6 months' salary, right, because the person is working for the government. These things have impact. And the younger generation grows up looking at the parents and thinking, 2 generations are not going to be foolish, consecutively. Okay. All this theory you are teaching is not working. So you have the family, you have the schools, we know they are run down, public schools, we have the religious organizations, and the economic structure, to a large extent, shapes people's thinking.
Dr. Adeyemi, one of the things that raises this issue for me is the qualifications for getting into leadership positions in our country. Before you get into civil service, maybe level 6 or so, you have to have a first degree. before you become president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, you only need to attempt WAEC, not even JAM. So, and that's why I'm asking that question, because a good number of people are wondering if if that is for the president, imagine what then is for a councillor, for the local government chairman, a state governor, and on and on and on like that, members of the Houses of Assembly. That's the reason I'm asking that question. Because the last time you were with us, you said being in office doesn't make you a leader. So that's why I'm asking that question. Is this something that, how do we create that culture where we actually have a system? I mean, you've spoken to the fact that primary school, secondary school, and all those things, but we're too much in a hurry. Things have gone awry so bad. People want results now, and you are telling us 4 years is not enough. So, what do we do? Are we doomed?
Well, we are not doomed. That's where the power of vision is, right? So, there was this Harvard professor that discovered the law. They call it the law of time perspective. The longer the time you take into consideration in making your decisions and taking action, the higher you rise. It's actually a principle, it's a law. You can't break it. It's the one that has the power to break you. The person planning for 10 years will always rise higher than the person planning for 10 months or only 10 weeks. So we cannot escape the long-term dimension. However, we need short-term intervention right now, like you said. So we've got to, it's like cash crops. They usually take years before they begin to fruit. But you need the food crops, right, to survive. That's why I would strongly recommend, if there's a leadership school, go to the leadership school, attend training, you know, and I don't just want to talk about it, that's why I started one. And I'm happy to say, you know, in referring back to the question Mark asked earlier about how we are measuring results, a good number of the products of our own leadership school have started their own leadership schools. That's why I'm encouraging, go for a seminar, go for a conference. Like we have one, like this week, Thursday and Friday. Some of the people attending our own conference, leadership conference, which we started in 2008, they've also started leadership conferences. So sometimes change starts, right? It is people that are strategic that catch it on the fringes. Most people only see things the way they are. They don't see the change that is happening. Change has begun, but I'm advocating we actually need, a whole lot of us need to get involved instead of sitting down and just criticizing and criticizing and criticizing. That has not changed anything.
Well, you've mentioned your conference twice. We're going to send you an invoice to that effect. But just a quick one before we go, if you can do this in 45 to 60 seconds. Collaboration. Mark asked you a question about the ministers having a conference, starting a retreat. The challenge we had in the previous government is the president at the time over and over again kept asking the MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies to collaborate. The president, this current president, has also said Nigeria can become a $1 trillion economy over 10 years. And you know he has just about maximum 8 years if he gets re-elected again. So in that fray, and then the state governors, but he said we can only do that in collaboration with state governors. So how should those collaborations be happening? If you can do this in 45 to 60 seconds.
Okay. See, we have to bring human psychology into this. What actually drives most people in the country? What drives most of the people in leadership right now? Money. Money. There's a book, Culture Matters. It's, you know, the compilation of the presentations at a symposium held at Harvard University many years ago. They were checking the relationship between culture and development. They checked the factors that shape people's thinking and values. Prevailing ideas about prosperity came number one. Nigerians are not foolish. The instinct for survival is the strongest. The people you are asking to collaborate, the only collaboration that makes sense to them is how they make more money. I promise you that. All the contracts going out of the MDAs and so on, even the oversight functions from the National Assembly, it's money driving it. That's why vision is very important from a leader. You've got to sell that idea, transfer that idea into people's hearts about where we're going and how we will get there. It is that where we're going that will give the motivation to people to sacrifice.
Okay.
The people in leadership need to make sacrifices now before that collaboration can happen. But I promise you, most people in leadership right now are not thinking sacrifice. They are thinking survival.
Okay. You just opened another can of worms that we have to take another time, some other time to do this. Thank you so much for being here. Dr. Adeyemi is a strategic leadership consultant. He's also a clergyman. Thank you for being here, and good luck with your conference.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're back in a moment to take on another issue. Do stay with us.